Good morning, everyone, and welcome again at the second webinar of the Connecting Czechs series organized by the Czech Embassy in Washington, D.C. My name is Jan Voska, and I work at the Embassy as a cultural attaché. I am able to offer you today's webinar also thanks to my wonderful colleagues from our public diplomacy department. I would like to give a very special shout out to my public relations specialist, Mary Fecko, who is providing really great support to the series. We started Connecting Czechs webinar series in 2020, and the main aim is basically to stay in touch with the Czech community in the United States during the COVID-19 outbreak. The series aims to strengthen ties between the embassy and Czechs, descendants of Czechs, and friends of the Czech Republic in the United States, and their associations, including schools, museum, culturals, and sports organizations. We have many of them here today with us. So today's webinar will actually focus on digital events. During this COVID-19 pandemic, digital events have served as an outlet to reach out to communities and maintain a sense of normalcy. And what more, in my personal opinion, digital events will most likely stay with us even after the pandemic is over. So for that, we have a very special guest here with us today from the EU delegation to the US, who kindly joined to help us understand them better and learn a new best practices when it comes to digital events. So please offer a very warm welcome to Majbritt le Courtois, Deputy Head of Press and Public Diplomacy, and Travis Smith, Press and Public Diplomacy Outreach Assistant. Majbritt and Travis, thank you so much for being here with us today. Majbritt and Travis will start us up with their presentation in a second. After that, we would love to hear from some of you about how you dealt with digitizing your events and activities in the past year. So I can imagine that we will have mainly to use the soccer terminology, two halves of the meeting today. In the first half, we will let our EU guests speak, and then I would invite you to ask them questions, discuss with them, share some of your examples. And in the second half, I would really appreciate if some of you also share with us personal examples, how they were able to digitize their events and how it went for them, or maybe how they dealt differently with the COVID-19 pandemic and their activities. Last request before we start, please turn off your microphones unless you are speaking. And I would also like to ask you if you are fine with us recording the meeting, because there are some who couldn't make it and we want to offer them the opportunity to see the presentation afterwards. So with this, I am giving the floor to Majbritt and Travis, and thank you everyone again for joining, and let's enjoy this 1 hour we have together with each other.
Thank you very much, Jan. It's a pleasure to be here. We're happy to see a lot of other people that is promoting Europe around in the US. So, and we're happy to share with you as well our experience, because we are in the fortunate situation, of course, that at the EU delegation, we have a quite large public relations or press and public diplomacy, as we call it, division. So we are 18 people in total. That covers everything from press to social media to events to culture, education, and monitoring of what's going on just on the political scene, etc. So we are quite large team, and therefore when the pandemic hit and we had to suddenly, one of the favorite words in the spring was pivot. So we had to change and go in from all our normal, mainly in-person events to digital event and virtual events. We actually found that we had, because we're such a large team, we had such an array of skills lying there that we didn't use that much, but we could certainly put together. And one of the people that was crucial for us in getting all this together and figuring out how all this worked, and one of the first people to set up our first Zoom meetings were Travis. So he's the one that has really dived into it, explored it, and really gotten us out there in many, many ways, and also saved us when things suddenly went iffy during an event. We started our first big event we did with all the member states. It was our European Open House. We normally have the European Union Open House on or just around the 9th of May, where we welcome about 40,000 people in our embassies in DC. So they have buses, they take tours from different embassies, they go visit, they come in, they have a look. which was of course not possible this year. So we managed, with the help of the embassies and the member states, to make that into a virtual event, and not just for the day, but for the whole month. So we continued with our European Month of Culture. We also then throughout the year tried to do whatever we could to maintain where we had participated before, and help them if they had anything at all virtually, because we felt it was very, very important to continue our partnerships, continue our support, showing that we were still there in whatever way we could. So we did things about the Pride Parade. We did our annual Kids Euro Festival, which is not just films, but theaters and workshops. And this year it was gaming, was very popular. From the Finnish embassy, for example, we've done a film festival. We've done tons and tons and tons of panel discussions. And they have ranged from simple 3 people sitting on Zoom and a lot of people listening into it. We have done to Facebook Live. We have done on YouTube as well. We have done with actually camera crews. We participated in the 2 political conventions over the summer. We have virtual booths at big conventions as well. We had that at the American Farm Bureau recently, where they have set it up now with virtual booths, and we had a virtual booth there manned by our colleagues. We're going to do some of the same for the South by Southwest this year. Last year we couldn't because they had to cancel very quickly. So, and our one last thing we did, just to close off the year last year, was we did a wonderful digital cookbook with the member states and the ambassadors and the chefs, and we got together there and we did this wonderful Christmas thing, a holiday thing that was very well perceived as well. So I think we have been successful in pivoting our transitions, and I agree with Jan. Digital diplomacy is there to stay because we reach so many more people than we did before. We reach very different audiences and we get to interact with them. However, it's not exactly the same as in person. You don't have the same networking. You don't have the same connections often as you do when you're in person. So what we see and what we are planning is to have both things very strongly going forward in the future. And for that, of course, we need to have good skills. We need to know what to do. We need to know where we can reach them. So actually at the moment, we are working with a company to have an audit of our digital presence, how we do it, our audiences, all these kind of things. But again, that comes from where we are and the amount of things we're doing. But it goes all the way down to the very small basic things on how do we do that? What should we do? Which things should we think about? So if that's not in place, it won't work. So that's why Travis has been very good at also not teaching not only our department, but the whole of the delegation team on these kind of things. And I think he has something he would like to share with you as well here. So with that, I will pass it over to Travis, and he can do his thing. Thanks, Travis.
Thanks, Majbritt. Thanks, Majbritt. Thanks for that flattering introduction. Hi, everybody. I hope this morning finds you well, wherever you are. Jan, thanks for hosting us today. I've been asked to talk, as Majbritt said, about digital events and kind of transferring some of the things that you might have done in person to the online world, as well as just some do's and don'ts of when you are on or hosting digital events. From Jan, I've gathered that some of you are actually pretty advanced in this field already. So a lot of what I might be about ready to say, you've already heard, but it never hurts to hear an echo. And for those of you where this is completely new, I urge you to listen up. We will pass around my contact information after this, and you're more than welcome to reach out. Before I get started, I'm going to share my screen. You should now see on your screen a PowerPoint that says digital events. They are not as simple or as scary as they may seem. So as Jan was saying, we have had to kind of transfer our world into the digital world. However, a lot of people have shied away from doing this, fearing that the digital sphere is something that they cannot touch because they don't have a tech degree or really know much about computer sciences. In the parentheses, I urge you to say this is not true. Digital events are not as scary as they seem, nor are they something that you can simply say, I want to take something that I once did and just put it online. They're not as simple as they seem either. But if you have a decent background of what they consist of, something tells me that you will be able to make them happen pretty quickly. The future is digital is a phrase that the European Commission was using about 5-6 years ago when we were launching a large online platform and slowly moving everything to the digital sphere. This phrase, if assumed today, is actually false. We're here. The present is digital. I know that the coronavirus has kind of amplified and escalated us into a space where this might have happened a little quicker than we were ready for, but we were already moving toward putting events online, toward putting our entire briefings online, toward having interactive chat rooms online. We were already there. The coronavirus just kind of sped us up maybe a year or two quicker than we were anticipating. So with this, I'm saying that this is not something, as Jan mentioned, this is not something that's going away, this world of digital events. We will have in-person events return too, but it's important to understand the importance of digital events because they are here to stay. A couple of European Union examples. As Majbritt said, we work for the EU Delegation of the United States based here in Washington, D.C. We have a host of regular annual events. And I want to just give you an idea of the impact of what happened to these events when we turned them completely digital. You can see from our Defense Forum, our convention events, and our Schumann Challenge that when we were able to open up our events, put them online and open them up to anybody instead of restricting them to physical access, we were able to reach exponentially larger numbers of people, thousands and thousands of people. The Defense Forum right here is one of the ones that I like to highlight. 220 people attended in 2019, and that was considered awesome. We loved it. We loved the engagement. Instead, we had over 5,600 viewers for our Defense Forum this year. And in all honesty, because we put the videos online, they continue to ascend in perpetuity. But you ask, virtual participation is not the same as actually meeting somebody, is it? No, it's not. But digital events are not worse. They're just simply different engagement styles than in-person ones. You cannot, as I say here, exchange a business card or meet on the sidelines per se, as you might want to do at an in-person event. But there are some pros as well. First, as I already mentioned, you can have an unlimited number of participants, depending on what type of platform you're hosting on, what your Zoom subscription is, etc. Whereas normally you might have to rent out a ballroom or something if you wanted to have a reception. You can have an online reception where many, many, many more people can actually join, which is also possible because people are not restricted to location. Instead of people having to be here in Washington, D.C., we are able to open up our events to people from other cities, coasts, and countries. And also, people aren't just showing up to be seen or to have a glass of wine. They're actively logging in and choosing to take an hour out of their day to be at this event. You all are taking an hour out of your morning or afternoon, I don't know where you are right now, to be here. Yeah, your email might be up on the other screen, or you might have put this onto the television or something in the background. But that's not to say that when people show up at in-person events, they aren't checking their phones constantly as well. There's also extra flexibility as the age of online events means, as Jan is doing it, you can record these very simply. Instead of having to bring a camera crew in, you can just simply click a button and then release it minutes later for those who either missed it or those who attended it who might want to view it again. So don't worry, online events won't ruin in-person events. We will still be able to shake hands. We will still be able to have a glass of wine, but also we will continue to be exploring digital events more and more because the European Union delegation is not the only organization that has seen a benefit from going online. Great, you say. So, of course, how do I do one? Well, many of you have probably done this already, but there are a few things that you need to know, and there are two basic pillars that I would like to really hammer home right now. First, you must have a hosting platform. This might be something that is very obvious, but still warrants being actually said. A hosting platform is what I like to say is the stage for the online event. This is, technically speaking, the space where the featured speakers, panelists, performers, etc., gather to debate, discuss, perform, etc. It can include breakout rooms or the digital green room. The waiting room that you entered before being led into this would be kind of the digital green room. There's a closed webinar. This is probably the most popular type of event. We are in one right now. This is one where you have to register. or probably be forwarded an invitation and then actually have a specific link to be able to enter this event so that you can hear somebody like myself or Jan or whoever your other guest speakers have been speak, ask them questions, et cetera, et cetera. The public facing version of this would be an open webinar. This is something that's normally perhaps broadcast live, or the registration link is made available to the public on the Czech Facebook page or something like that. We did a bunch of online screenings for the Films Across Borders festival here, where the registration link was open to the public on our events page. We promoted it on social media so anybody could come and join. A fourth, and one that has really become popular during the pandemic, is what's called a simulated live. This is something where the majority of the content has been pre-recorded, but is then aired either online or maybe on a news channel to appear as if it's live. What the best example I can give of this is if any of you watched the inauguration parade last week, where John Legend and Katy Perry and everybody else, across the country appeared as if they were hosting a live performance, with performances from Los Angeles, Chicago, my hometown of Seattle. Most of those performances were, of course, pre-recorded. They didn't have the Foo Fighters performing, at 8 p.m. Eastern time. They had one or two live segments where John Legend would maybe be talking to a camera, or Tom Hanks, the host, was talking to the camera. But then they would shift into what was called a simulated live there. We did a similar thing at the European Union, as Majbritt was saying, back in May for the European Union Open House, where we actually had an hour-long program that was screened on our social media pages. It looked like it was a live broadcast, but the majority of it was pre-recorded. And then finally, there's a hybrid event. This is where you actually have panelists that are live, but they are participating virtually, yet are screened in a physical setting, where a host maybe is walking between computer screens or a television screen, normally in a studio, and they're speaking to these screens as if they are people. So that gives you the feeling of maybe like a news conference or a press briefing, but instead of actually having more than one person there, it is one person speaking to screens that are broadcasting remotely where people are speaking from. If you watch the Democratic or the Republican conventions, they did this a lot. And then the final add-on element there is live streaming. Pretty much everybody knows this now. With any of this, you can live stream, click a button immediately, and it is broadcast to everybody there. There are pros and cons of live streaming. I'm happy to go over them if you would like at another time, or during answering questions, but just know that it is, of course, a possibility. Great, you say, so what if I'm on a digital event? These are Travis's 3 easy ways to look good during a digital event. Number 1, frame yourself properly. This is something that goes without saying, and I can see a lot of you are doing this, and some of you are not right now. It's totally fine. It's early in the morning, and you're not on the digital event. I'm the one that is. Position yourself right in the middle of the frame, chest up. Try and assess the situation to wear proper clothing and make sure that there's nothing embarrassing or inappropriate in the background. Here is an image that I took of myself last night. If I do say so myself, this one was perfect. Look at that framing. I'm right in the middle third of the screen. I'm wearing a proper shirt for this. It's a collared shirt. Unfortunately, I have to broadcast from my bedroom. I live in a house where it's extremely small and very loud downstairs. But a bad example would be this one here. This is me in my Liverpool FC jersey. It's not proper for something like this. I'm wearing a hat. There's a bottle of whiskey in the background. The framing is bad. As you can see, half of my forehead is cut off, and even my bed is in view. And even worse, my bed is not made in this image. As you can see, these things go without saying, but know what your background looks like and how your head is positioned on the screen. Number 2, something that I like to say is talk to the dot. That little dot in the center top of your computer is obviously where the camera is. It can be very strange to speak to something when your face is immediately below in the screen. You want to look at your face, or even to look at the people that you're speaking to. I understand this is difficult. A very simple solution to do this with is, if you have the latest update of Zoom, and you might actually right now be able to do this, you can click and drag those squares to put you right in the center. And I'll show an image of this here in a second. And then make sure that you mute other windows, such as your email browser, so you don't hear the bing, or have music playing in the background. And if you can avoid rustling paper or something like that, or taking notes while you're speaking, it will actually enhance your ability to clearly communicate in ways you cannot even imagine. Good examples. This is me in a section meeting of my office. Sorry, Majbritt. Here, where I have positioned myself by dragging my Zoom square immediately below the dot on my computer. As you can see right there, I'm actually staring at the Zoom square that I am in, but it looks as if I'm staring at everybody else, and it does help to enhance this virtual eye-to-eye contact. As I mentioned, you can click and drag your Zoom box. Go ahead and try it right now. It's not going to change anything here. It's only your own personal viewing to make sure that you or the person you're speaking to is right beneath that dot. Bad examples. These are me that are, this is me talking to myself, but I'm looking at the screen. It may not feel like it's that big of a difference, but as you can see from these two images here, one of mine is right in the middle of the screen and the other is off to the left. And by making eye contact with my box on the screen, it actually looks as if I'm completely distracted from the conversation. And finally, 3, get a good connection and test it. We like to, if we're hosting a larger event, we like to 1 or 2 days in advance, be sure to test internet connection of not just us, but everybody who will be participating. We encourage people to enter and then connect with the same internet that they will be connecting from during the actual event, so that we can actually be able to, hey, this is going to work. We need you to move closer to the router. We need you to close all of your other browsers, make sure that other people are off the internet, et cetera, et cetera. And another thing is, if you don't have good Wi-Fi, consider tethering. Tethering is also known as hotspotting. Most of you are probably familiar with this, but it is a kind of cheat code that can get you out of some sticky situations if your Wi-Fi is struggling that day. So tethering would be, you turn on your hotspot on your phone, connect it to your 4G on your computer, and it'll actually broadcast in almost perfect quality. A good example, this is me tethering last night. This is a crystal clear image, and I was able to take this screenshot looking very happy. I hope some of you are laughing. It might be too early. Have an extra cup of coffee if so. But a bad example would be if my internet went out and if something awkward like me actually freezing happened. I got you there. That's one of my favorite online jokes. It's impossible to make jokes in the online world because all of you are muted, so I have no idea if you're laughing, but in my head, I'd like to think that you actually are. Know that when your video drops or when your screen freezes, it does everything to dismantle the conversation. It's tough to have these person-to-person conversations online. So you do have to focus on, okay, how can I make my connection as good as possible? It happens. Wi-Fi drops. People, of all levels have dropped signals during big time events. It happens. Don't be dismayed if it happens to you, but try to take all of the steps possible to ensure that you at least try not to make it happen. And one final thing about digital events. I think this goes without saying. The phrase of the year is "you're muted." Just know when the little microphone with the red slash through it is on, you are not going to be heard. So if you start speaking like this, and then everybody else on the Zoom goes, mute, mute, you're muted, it's slightly embarrassing. Be sure to toggle on and off whenever you stop speaking, and then almost have that mouse ready to click when you're ready to speak. And the final thing, the future is not digital. We're in the future now. Digital events are here to stay. And while we will return to in-person ones, I can't wait to see how online events continue to grow and how you all wind up adapting your in-person things to the online world. With that, Jan, I don't know if you want to field questions right now. I'm happy to answer some. I know that we probably want a few minutes extra. I will stop my screen sharing here in a second. Otherwise, feel free to hop in, Jan, and I'll let you direct the conversation here. Thank you again for hosting me and Majbritt. And as I said, I'm happy to circulate this presentation however you desire.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Travis, and thank you, Majbritt. I think that what speaks for everything is just to see the chat box and see the people, how they are having fun, and they are already asking me to share the presentation with them, and we will surely do all of that, I can promise. And Travis, this is excellent presentation. We yet have to speak about your Liverpool football jersey. So as a Manchester United fan, we have something to discuss. But back to our broadcast here. I think I will make my job fairly easy right now. I can ask you plenty of questions, and you already do know me. But I think that our participants who are here, and we have almost 40 of them, can have some really great questions. And to make it interactive, that was actually one of the goals of the presentation, and you did it amazingly. I would like to open the floor to anyone who is interested in asking the questions live. So please, if you have anything, it's a great opportunity to speak with our EU delegation colleagues, and you can ask them about not only what they do when it comes to public diplomacy, but of course, more specifically when it comes to online events. So if there is anyone who is interested to jump in, please feel free to do so right now, or you will have to hear me asking prepared questions. And that is not fun.
I see William has a question on the chat box. Is it all right if I answer that, Jan?
That's completely fine. William is asking, could you clarify the 5,000 attendees at your convention? Is there a 5,000 in a Zoom call or 5,000 reached on a social platforms?
So first off, thank you, William. It varies how you want to calculate how many people have seen your event, I guess. We like to calculate it as concurrent views in whatever we have uploaded. So at the actual event, we had a Zoom call that allowed for 1,000 people to enter. It was a webinar essentially, but we also streamed it live. And between the 917 people that joined the online event, so in the Zoom call as you are right now, and the roughly 4,500 people that watched online, you can see the little ticker, we added them together to equal about 5,600 people. The concurrent views on YouTube have gone up, but it does take all of those numbers and then add to them afterward. Slovak American Cultural Center. When doing webinars on a specific topic, what are your thoughts on having one moderator and the speaker versus additional speakers to give variety to the webinar? Less is more, ? Jan mentioned something, actually, I think before this started, about brevity on online events is extremely nice. This is something where people did not log on to hear you ramble. That being said, a concise point can still get across very well, and sometimes it's better to hear numerous points from different voices. We've had a handful of events where we've actually had 2 moderators and maybe 4 panelists, and it works really, really well. I don't have any problem with numerous speakers on a panel. I always like, even in in-person events, to keep it between 3 and 6. If you're gonna have 2 moderators, I would say 5 or 6 total, so that's 3 or 4 panelists. If you're gonna have 1 moderator, I'd say 3 or 4 panelists. But I think as long as everybody is educated in brevity being the soul of wit, to use a Shakespeare line, you can actually get points across with different faces in different boxes, because it also helps to see somebody new flash across your screen instead of just the same person talking the entire time.
Thank you, Travis. There is another question. There are actually many questions coming, so I will try to get through all of them. Tanya asked you about how do you handle audio if there are 2 or more people speaking in one screen?
So in one screen, Tanya, feel free to hop in if I misunderstand your question. You're saying if 2 people, like if I was to have somebody sitting here next to me, if that's the case, then I mean, in all honesty, you have to keep it. You have to trust those people that they are going to be able to handle each other one-on-one. And say, okay, only one of you can speak because microphones can only do so much. That being said, if you know that this is going to happen beforehand, what I would actually advise is for them to try and divvy up between 2 different devices. What this allows is you, as the event host, to mute or go toggle back and forth between people. There's always the raise hand function if people want to, kind of set themselves up in a queue to be able to ask questions or to speak in turn. And it gives you kind of assurance knowing that audio will not be, or audio crossing, as we say, will not be a factor in inhibiting people from hearing what folks have to say. It's becoming more and more common for people to want to share screens because folks are starting to get vaccinated. People are starting to socially distance together. In the online working world right now, it's still fairly rare. So we actually have not encouraged that too much, but I would ask that at the technical rehearsal that you either run over a run of show or make people understand that, hey, you cannot both speak at the same time. You're welcome to mute yourself and say, I'm going to address this question. And then one person speaks at the same time as well, or one person speaks solo as well.
Thank you, Carol. And Tanya, if there is anything else you would like to add, feel free to jump in or write it to the chat. I see that you unmuted yourself, so.
Yeah. No, thanks. That was very helpful. I was, one additional question is, I've had trouble when 2 people were speaking. Neither one was speaking directly at the microphone, and we've had audio problems where we can't hear. Is there some kind of attachable microphone that one should wear in that situation, or is it ideal if each person has their own device? Thanks.
Pardon me while I, this little guy right here, this is called the blue snowball microphone. It's $30 on Amazon, and it is studio quality. It's directional. So what that means is if I was to point, it's not plugged in right now, so it's not gonna make a difference. If I was to point it this way, it would pick me up. If I was to point it this way, it would pick somebody else up. However, it is an ideal quality microphone. I'm not trying to sell you something right now, but I use this a lot for virtual events, and it plugs into your computer via USB port. There's no handy dandy stuff to use. You don't have to learn how to, do any sort of big tech programming. The one thing that you have to know how to do is to simply select which input microphone you're going to use on your Zoom. I see a handful of people nodding their heads. That is not in this Zoom meeting right now, but wherever your Zoom icon is, the blue box with the white camera, you should be able to select settings and then audio. And then in that, there's a drop-down menu for input, and that microphone, if plugged in, will show up, and it will make a world of difference for people that you're struggling to hear. Now, understandably, you cannot always tell people, hey, please buy this microphone, or you say you're having an event, and it's taking place in an hour. One of the things that we'll do if we're having problems is, and this is kind of a standard tech fix, is we will actually call them and be able to stream their audio through on Zoom from their phone instead of their computer, and then put like a picture of them up in their Zoom screen. It's a troubleshooting device that we don't like to use because it does not allow you to actually see folks. But in reality, if you can see somebody and you can't hear them, there's no point in them participating as well. So audio in from a phone call is always a good way to go, because phones use data instead of internet, and they all have to have good microphones for you to actually be able to hear.
Well, the other solution is obviously this headset, but then it seems like you are playing e-games instead of working, or that you are directing the airport traffic. So, but for me personally, as a non-native speaker, obviously it makes it much bigger difference that if people are able to hear me clearly, than if they just were thinking, oh my gosh, what is this guy trying to say? So, but Travis' solution, I think, is much more preferred because it looks more professional. There is another question from Carl. A face-to-face event, networking with others, is typically a reason for attending. How are digital events allowing for networking with others? And I think I can follow up on this topic by a question from Michael, because he is asking, you mentioned a con is the inability to the sidebar meeting with friends. Having attended per professional conference that was remote this year, I missed these conversations in the hallway. So I would say we have two very similar questions about, yes, how can you meaningfully network and create meaningful connections online? That's a big one.
So, and this is, I think Michael and Carl hit the nail on the head here of when you shift to online events, sure, you can amplify your reach a ton, but sometimes you miss that kind of like simple ability to be like, hey, can you and I grab a cup of coffee or really actually make a connection? Can I slip you a business card? It's tougher, but it's not impossible. One of the ways that we've been able to do it is through breakout rooms. And I don't know if you've used breakout rooms in Zoom before. You normally have to cater them, which means you can actually put people into different rooms, or we like to put small groups into different rooms. And honestly, you can randomize them, or you can say, okay, these two people have indicated that they want to talk to each other, and then give like a 5 to 10 minute breakout session where if Jan was to start breakout rooms here, say he could put me and Carl together, and immediately, boom, Carl and I would be sent to our own private Zoom where we would chat one-on-one, virtually, for 5 to 10 minutes until Jan was to bring everybody back. Now, there's also a platform out there, and pardon me, I'm not remembering the name, Majbritt, you might be able to remember, where we used once, where people can actually request to be moved into their own breakout rooms and make it happen by themselves. I'm going to check on the name of that platform, Jan, because it's slipping my mind right now. It was called Squares.
It's not Squarespace or something.
No, Squarespace is a program, a code programmer, but it's I think it's called Squares or Foursquare. I don't know. I'll be sure to get back to you on that, because the world of online events understands that issue and is doing their best to make sidebar meetings possible. They are possible. I will say it right now, they will never be the same. You will not have the same exact interaction which is why we'll never lose in-person events. But if an in-person event is difficult because there's a raging pandemic or because people are, a world away from each other, there are ways to have a larger event and then still break off for these smaller coffee chats.
Another thing as well is if you just want to kind of like giving a business card to somebody, if you use the chat, just send your information to that person instead of sending always to everyone. Very often you see during meetings, people send semi-private things to everybody. But instead of sending to everybody, you can go down and you can actually just send a chat with one person. So you can say, you can choose somebody like, I see name Ellen Walker, and I can, if she had made an intervention, I like it, I can just go in, send a chat to Ellen Walker saying, hi, it's Majbritt, I really liked what you said, want to catch up later, this is my contact. So you can do that. In that way, it works very well. I've actually had quite a few new contacts in that in seminars and events I participated in this year. So I would definitely, people get known, it's like a DM on the social media. People get like, oh, that's nice. Yeah. So that's definitely a way to do it.
Thank you, Majbritt. I would say let's do one more question, and then we can open the floor also for others, because I have been in touch with some of you about sharing your examples from the last year. So we can also make it a learning experience for Majbritt and Travis. And I promise I will not take them away from you. They will be here until the end of the meeting. So if there are any questions, they can jump in, and you might also share with them and maybe ask about if it was the right way, how you did it. So, but before that, I saw a question from Zuzana, and here we go. She is asking how to improve the virtual background so one's extremities do not disappear when one moves.
So this is when you put, I see a handful of you have a virtual background right now. This is when to put, like an image of the Czech flag or your building in the background, I'm assuming. It's an imperfect technology, I won't lie. And the ability to put the virtual background is, I'm not going to call it a gimmick. It's actually a great way for branding. We will have news briefings where we'll have, EU and the US in the background in a way where we used to have to pay thousands of dollars for a step and repeat before. Again, there are big benefits to this. However, when somebody quickly raises their hand or does something, it's not, it's not uncommon for the hand to suddenly disappear or look kind of awkward. In all honesty, the best thing that you can do is to find a decent physical background so that your camera still picks up everything that's happening in the background. The second is to choose a background that is primarily one color, or to sit as close as possible to your camera without, completely obscuring your face. Your camera picks up what is closest to it, but as things go into the background, it might slowly think that you are blending into the image behind you. And again, it's an imperfect technology. The second best is to use the blur feature. This is only possible, I believe, on some of the latest updates of Zoom, or you have to have a computer with a quad 4 processor. I'm not remembering right now, but the blur feature simply would kind of dull everything that's behind you, but it does not think that you're disappearing into the blur behind you. It does, does not associate you with an image. We found, as I said, the best to be, I can see a handful, if you don't mind me pointing out, Carl, your background right now is great. The background of pictures and kind of like a wall where there's maybe some sort of cultural thing going on in the background is very ideal. As I said, unfortunately, I'm in my room where it looks like this fan is my hat. If I was to be doing a meeting with ambassadors or something, I'd probably have to go to our press room in the EU delegation because I simply don't have the ability to do it from here. However, my computer does not like it when I do the virtual backgrounds. It starts to think that I'm part of it, and in all honesty, sometimes I will like lose my neck into it all. So I choose to instead show you the fan hat and the wall behind me with the guitar.
Thank you, Travis. So with this, I would wrap up the first half that was actually the biggest part of our meeting, but I was trying to leave the space for all of your questions. And for, I would say, everyone, including our guests, this is just a big signal that the presentation was awesome. And I'm so happy that we can offer something what is indeed useful. And right now, I would really like to open the floor for all of you to share something from your own last year where you had to digitize one of your events. And I know that it's not easy sometimes to break the ice. So I hope that Marta McCabe, who is close to my screen, she is just below my picture, so I see her, will not hate me if I invite her to kick us off, maybe with her own examples, because she was very successful with her activities, not only when it came to Czech school, but also as a, let me say, civil society activist, when in cooperation with colleague from Brussels, she made a series of Zoom calls between ministry and Czech expats living in the US and abroad that were very successful. So Marta, can you share with us how did it go?
Thank you, Jan. I will share very briefly. And thanks for the presentation. It was very helpful. I wish everybody is assigned to watch this before they show up on any Zoom calls. That'd be wonderful. So anyway, I am in North Carolina, and I run a Czech and Slovak school here. So with the pandemic, we were kind of caught a little bit by surprise in the spring, like all of us. But as a teacher, I had to scramble and do something real quick in my job anyway. So I kind of did my trial and error part at my work. And then we did move to online teaching in the fall of 2019. And as both Travis and Majbritt mentioned, we have not only found out that it's possible, we also found out that we can reach a lot more people. So what we do are most of our online events are, of course, classes. So we always had hard times figuring out how to get people in North Carolina to come to one place and meet. It's not like we live in DC and we can. There's a lot of us. We have a large community, but it's spread out across the state. So the online environment proved really successful. And we were happy to be able to connect with a lot of people from across the state. So we opened up the classes for adults and had 45 students out of nowhere. And we also worked with the program for children, started that in the fall, and we're continuing this spring. So for details, I'll happy to talk to anybody, but it's not really that I made that happen. I'm just very glad that there are so many people in here around me that are willing to jump into some kind of unknown and work with it. So we were very glad about that. The online conferences with the ministry was a lot of fun too. We used Zoom and we did host about 300 people on each of those calls. So it's possible to host a lot of people. One has to really make sure one is muting people that are not muting themselves and all, but it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for people to actually connect, because in the past, we're all thinking, oh, we have to travel to meet somebody, we have to travel to Prague. But now, since we finally just can't do it, we're forced to come up with something else. So that was helpful. Anyway, I don't want to take too much time, but I really, for me, it's kind of a surprise how much value added is there when we add this online component to things. And I think from now on, we're going to keep using some online component in our classes, as well as other events.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marta. Is there anyone else who would like to share, or I will have to choose some of you and you don't want to see that?
Well, I'd certainly be happy to share. I'm Cecilia Rakusek, the president and CEO of our National Czech and Slovak Museum and Library in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And for us, when the pandemic hit in March, we had to close for 3 months, but we only closed to the public. And so, to use that word that Majbritt used in terms of pivoting, what we did is we actually came to work, a core of us, every single day to think about different scenarios, because we were already doing a lot on YouTube. We were already doing some podcasts, but to really bring it together to make sure that I think the three things that were most important is that we reached all of our audiences, that we reached a wide age group, because we, you know, work with children, preschool, and we work with individuals in long-term care facilities. So to make sure that we were going to be reaching and to know their levels of comfortability with technology. And that's, you know, I think something that's really important. And then we wanted to, I kept saying, think outside the box. What can we do? We're smart Czechs and Slovaks. What can we do? So we established two things that we're very proud of. One is a national Czech and Slovak cooking school, and we've branded it as such. And we were just quoted recently in a museum in Italy about this, how we established this national Czech and Slovak cooking school. And that will be virtual, as well as once we open up, we will actually have an in-person kitchen where people can come to Iowa for a week at a time or more to learn about our cuisine. Then we did something which I think alludes to a little bit what Travis was saying. We tweaked people by teaching one day, every day, one phrase in Czech and Slovak. It was so popular that we ended up having to teach actual courses now. So we actually do have online courses in Czech and Slovak that are ongoing as a result of that. And then I think the last thing that we've learned is, how do you take a national museum and library that has over 70,000 visitors every year, and how do you turn that in a time when you can't have that many? And we found that clearly a small percentage will, we are open. We've been open now, but we did have a derecho, a hurricane in Iowa that forced us to close for a couple of weeks. And so we're at about 35 to 40% of our normal attendance, but we're finding that people want the virtual, but they also want to come. So I think in this transition, we're trying to, take that 70,000 people that would normally visit and say about a third to 40% of those are going to continue to come. But then I think that other 50 or 60% are going to continue to want to be engaged virtually. And what we can do is do more of a national and international. For example, we have people taking our Czech courses from Kuwait, from South America, so that we're now becoming more national as well as international. And so I think there's a benefit. I like to say, Travis, that it forced us to do stuff we thought maybe we would do 5 years down the road. And that's to think about this 60% that probably couldn't come and visit us, and how can we expand that audience in California and Canada and South America. So I think it's as difficult as it was. I think that this virtual world is causing us to really reach a broader audience. And our underlying goal is to enhance the footprints of Czechs and Slovaks throughout the country, especially in the US, and if we go beyond, especially. So for us, it's been a challenge, but we're trying, and we hope that we can continue to do that. And I will be happy to send the links to you as well for that as well. Martha did, thank you. And we can also send you our programs.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. I'm just thinking that if people and organizations were able to respond to all the challenges as you did, and as many of you do, like that would be an easy world to live in. So, dear guests from the EU, if you want to comment any of this, of course, please feel free to jump in, because I know for you is also a unique chance to speak with our friends and colleagues. So I will let Travis to react, and then I will invite Petr Justin from Maryland to jump in.
Well, I agree with what Cecilia just said about the comment of these are things that we thought were going to happen 5 years down the road. Well, necessity is the mother of invention, and suddenly you were forced to do it. Sometimes there's no better way to actually be able to make something happen than by saying, well, otherwise we're not going to reach anybody. So congratulations. Also, these are all very cool things that I'm hearing everybody do or talk about what they've done or what they are doing. It's also fun because this is completely different than some of the stuff that we do at the delegation. So Majbritt and I are smiling and nodding right now, being like, oh, that's a cool idea. One thing that I wanted to touch on is a couple of people mentioned lighting. It is important when you're on an event right now to understand that you have to be front lit, that there should be a light in front of the camera that is either looking at you or at least illuminating your face instead of a stronger light behind you. Probably many of you have heard of these things, or if you haven't, or you might even have one, but a ring light is a very good idea to get. I have one in front of me right now, and if I was to turn it off, I will show you what it would look like. That would be my face. But instead, turning it on obviously allows kind of a warmer brighter, more normal viewing of my face. Sorry, that was a clunky way to say that. It's like $13. So again, these are unfortunately things that are that you have to make investments in, but they're not big tech investments. I got one that has a big arm that can come down and it can clamp onto the side of your desk. There are ones that are tripods. There are ones that can clip onto your computer. There's 1,000 different varieties of these things. Anyway, Jan, take it away.
The company should pay you for offering like their stuff in an amazing way.
Hey, they've made my life
I'm
a
just
lot
going
better.
to Amazon after we finish all of that and ordering stuff. Travis, thank you. And Peter, I know that your organization was also very active in online world, so please share with us.
Dobrý den, greetings from Baltimore. And before I share my experience, I would like to double the amount of Liverpool fans on the call. I'm gonna speak for our board. We are Czech and Slovak Heritage Association in Baltimore, founded more than 30 years ago. And so what we're trying to do mainly is through various activities to bring people together. In person, we run various activities, festivals, picnics, but they're all in person. Now we're hit with the pandemic, obviously that brought us to this challenge. First challenge was really to get together as a board, because we are volunteers trying to run those events, and we couldn't connect. We were trying to call each other via phone. That didn't work. You cannot really plan an event or really plan what's ahead of us. How do we approach this pandemic, this problem? So what we did immediately as a nonprofit, we researched it online, and what we did successfully, I must say, we applied for a Google business account for nonprofits. And I would recommend maybe researching. This is from Google. Researching, and Google is answering me now. I would recommend that to everyone, because it's free and it gives you multiple options, not just in virtual meetings, but what we end up doing is we put all of our documents on the cloud, and now using the database as a document sharing during some of our meetings. Obviously, we were able to use the YouTube now. Now we have a YouTube channel, not really heavily used yet, but it gave us a lot of opportunity. So what we did, we used the Google Meet as a different platform than Zoom, but very similar. So we finally got together and started planning on what are we actually going to provide for our base. The first, we also, I need to mention, we run language schools. We run Czech and Slovak language schools. The school is more than 30 years old, and all the classes were in person, obviously, adult and kid classes. So and there was still ongoing interest from our students to keep on going, because those classes are, of course, mainly about learning that difficult language, but also just to get together and talk. So with the Google Meet, we continued with the classes. The adult school still has 25 students, various levels. They still meet, they still talk. I think we extended the class to 2-hour meetings, because they just, when they connected, first they want to talk how everybody's doing, everybody's healthy or not, issues, and then the teaching kind of continued, and then at the end, discussion again. So they wanted to stay on the call, it seemed. The kids, bringing kids together was much easier than in person, because all the kids, they have various activities, sports, soccer. So we got them together. That gave us an advantage, because the kids now learning and in all the public school systems are mainly online. They actually helped us with the process, with those platforms. when the teacher was teaching and couldn't really navigate the screen, they asked the kids, 10-year-olds, to help us with the IT problem, and they were able to help them out because they are much more advanced, as we found out. Also, it increased the number of our students in our kids' schools. We have 2 kids from Toronto, Canada. We have some kids from Colorado. We have teacher from Tampa, Florida. One of our adult school teacher uses her mom connecting to the class and helping with the teaching from Czech Republic. So it opened more opportunities, but looking into the future, we still understand that we cannot really stay online forever. So when the pandemic eases, what we're thinking ahead is some sort of a hybrid system where we can still bring those kids from Colorado and Canada, but maybe bi-monthly or once a month, maybe twice a month, to meet in person whoever can.
Thank you, Petr. Petr, can I just jump in? I have to say I'm very glad to hear that. I'm very glad to hear that because Petr is completely right. One of his students or Maryland students is also my wife, who normally wouldn't have a chance to learn Czech, and she is learning Czech also because of the pandemic, to say so. So we couldn't afford to travel from DC to Maryland to Baltimore every week. So I am very happy to hear that you are thinking about some hybrid events in the near future. That's great to hear. And if I might, I'm very sorry, friends, that we are so short on time right now. I see it's 11, and I know that if I run too much overtime, Travis will say that this is not the best practice. That is part of the online events, because the best practice is to start and end on time. But I also promised Susanna, who is very active in Czechoslovak Society of Arts and Sciences in New York. So Susanna, please share with us, and then I promise everyone we will wrap this up and say bye-bye to each other.
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to hear that your wife is learning Czech, because she was my student at some point. Well, I just want to summarize this. I think this is I want to applaud Jan for organizing this, and I wonder if it's possible to do it more regularly, that we organizations that are active actually in the virtual world could get together and sort of exchange what we're doing, etc. And also cross-pollinate and cross-invite what we're doing, because I just learned, I admire what the National Museum in Cedar Rapids is doing. They're doing fabulous work there. And sometimes we don't learn about it because unless you go actively approach, go attend the website, etc., you don't know about it, right? So I wonder if we could proactively inform each other at some platform that maybe the embassy is providing. I don't know. But I think the information is a power, right? And so let's say I would like to push our event that's coming up, and it could be interesting to everybody. And we're doing a marathon reading of Švejk in April. But in the meantime, we're doing lectures that are interesting to everyone, not only Czechs and Slovaks, but also to Americans who are interested in the Czech culture. But how do we let the others know? Right? We have our own little bubble around New York and East Coast, but how do we reach out and how do we cross-pollinate the information, basically? That's the thing.
Thank
and
you.
Also, I want to say that in New York, we are very active here because we have the Czech Center, the Dvořák Society, and then some other organizations. They're all very active and the Havel Library, they're all active on Zoom. So we are saturated with events here, right? But we would like to hear what other people are doing in the rest of the country and the world. That's mine. Thank you very much for doing this.
Susanna, thank you for your kind words. I need to run to another meeting. This is Cecilia. I already shut myself down, but I heard you. Let me just quickly say to you that we just met Monday, to have and we've got two things up already. We have all the fraternals and we have all of the festivals, but we are totally revamping our website, totally, because it's our 25th anniversary, and we are going to do exactly what you did. So what I said, so what we want to do is get all of the events and we would post them on the website, so that anybody that wanted to look at what Wilbur, Nebraska, New York, Chicago is doing. So we have one person assigned to this. And so, like I said, we have two things up already, and that's all the fraternal groups and all the festivals. And we hope to put everything up. So you probably, and maybe we can work with both of our embassies to get the word out so people would put this, because that is, Susanna, you hit the nail on the head, so to say, that people need to know all the good work that's going on. So stay tuned, but send us anything and we will put it up for free on our website.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Cecilia and Susanna. I would like to stress one very important thing. I think Peter mentioned it. Most of you do this in your free time. You do it out of your passion, and this is actually an incredible commitment. So we really appreciate this, and we are here to help you in sharing the information and giving you some tools and skills. So I'm very happy that you are finding this webinar useful. And Susanna, this is precisely one of the response, just like, trying to connect us and really keep us together. Here at the embassy in DC, we are also designing a newsletter that will be specifically tailored mainly for Czechs living in the United States. So I would say, I promise we will try to be active with what we do with webinars, but also open call. If you have an event, be it digital or in person, please feel free to send it my way, and I will do my best to keep each other in the loop. But at the end, the pandemic has been cruel to all of us, I would say. But if there are some good points, is that now we can take a break maybe and meet and think about how to inform each other about what we do, and we see how crucial and important it is. So if we could help to this by this event, I'm very happy. And I think that the most important help was that all of you came and shared your examples, and that our great guests from the EU delegation, Majbritt and Travis, were here with us. So again, thank you so much for coming. I will share the recorded broadcast with you, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.